Well, hello everyone. Thanks for surviving the day so far. It's been a really long day of lots of big ideas. Thank you for coming to our session. This is quite a short one. It's only half an hour, but we're here to sort of talk about deep tech and what it is, why it's different, and how we do it. Lauren and I work together quite a lot. Lauren is at Breakthrough Victoria, and I'm at MainSequence Ventures. And it means that we collaborate a lot and quite frankly ask ourselves a lot, what is it we're actually doing and how do we do it better? And so we're just going to kind of do that out in the open in front of you guys for half an hour. Just to begin, can we just sort of get a sense of why you are here? Like, how many people here, could you just give me a show of hands if you're a government person thinking about policy? Okay. And then how many people here are founders wondering how to do deep tech better? Ooh. Okay. And then how many people are investors or capital allocators of some kind? Okay, no. Great. So there's a good mix. Am I missing any categories? Am I missing any categories? Enablers. Okay, fantastic. So we're gonna have to kind of, and who and just a final hand of who's actually working in deep tech. Great. And it's hard, right? Okay. All right. So let's get into that. I mean, I suppose the first question is, what is deep tech and why is it hard? Do you want to have a crack or?
I feel like the least qualified person here with the amount of people working in deep tech.
Yeah.
But we can probably spend a bit of time talking about why it's hard. I might just ask one more question now that we have a really good feeling about who everyone is in the audience. Appreciate some of you who stayed on from the prior session, but how many people actually know what Breakthrough Victoria and MainSequence Ventures are? Okay. We don't need to do any intro, so we're just going to go straight into it, right? So Phil reached out to me about this particular session. Deep tech is such a unique particular space, and when you're doing it in Australia, even within the APAC region, it's innately very challenging. And so for those that just sat through the Tech Council Australia presentation, you can see from a skills-based perspective, from an access to capital sort of space perspective, we have lots and lots of different challenges. But obviously, as you know, Breakthrough Victoria, we're looking at mobilising IP and commercialising innovation for impact. MainSequence Ventures is all about taking science and creating a brand new moonshot country, solving some really big, gnarly, challenging problems. The only way to address all of these different pieces is by going on the journey of deep tech commercialisation. And so you're already all working in deep tech, so we probably don't need to explain what deep tech is. But when we think about that particular journey, there's lots of different challenges along that way. And so maybe, Phil, did you want to talk to some of the challenges that you've seen over your time at maybe Pollenizer, right through to MainSequence?
Yeah, I mean, I think my journey here is I made my way through making startup companies through a company called Pollenizer, which was the first venture studio sort of incubator in Australia. But I was very much doing, let's say shallow tech companies, digital companies, marketplaces, SaaS platforms, that kind of stuff. And, I think we became very able to sort of make companies industrially almost. But towards the end of that time, I got the privilege to work on the CSIRO's On Accelerator program, which was in its early days. And that was the first time I walked into a room full of 100 of the top researchers in Australia and saw these incredible things that they were working on. When you have that moment that we're lucky enough to have every day where you kind of go, oh my God, humans can do this? That's amazing. We see that, and I had this terrible feeling though that even though I was kind of this sort of leading company builder in the country, I didn't know anything about what those people were doing. And that's sort of the first insight about what the sort of big failure is in deep technology. The silos are intense, and like the biggest job is to smash those silos down and get people kind of working together. And so that really started the next mission in my life, which was to just start doing that work, start applying this sort of company building muscle to the sort of the deepest of ideas that were coming out of the labs and sort of try and turn them into significant companies. And that's why MainSequence was founded, because we weren't doing that well. as a country, and I think many countries don't do this well because it's hard. We've got great science, but it tends to sit on the shelves, or it gets sold for a bargain in some kind of license to some overseas country. So we end up not capturing the value, and we end up in Australia continuing to be a mineral exporter, or a raw materials exporter, instead of actually finding these whole new industries. And we'll get to that, because I think that's where our collaboration gets really interesting, because I think we share the audacity to believe that we can actually build industries, that is something that humans can think about, design, and do. And that's a really important part of deep tech. But what are some of the problems? You think about how we start. How we start your sort of classic tech bro company. You can go to a co-working center, or you can work from home. You open your laptop, you get some Amazon cloud services, and you get to work, and you start a company, and you execute the people around you. And you do that for $25 that week. If you're starting a synthetic biology company that can make milk without cows, you need people that understand protein science. You need people that understand dairy science. You need a lab. So you can't even get started until you've got that stuff. And then you need production facilities, and then you need to understand food. And then you need to understand supply chains, and you just need loads of stuff, and it all just costs a fortune, and there's all just so much risk, and you don't even know where the stuff is because it's all kind of siloed. So the job of all of us is to smash down those silos and figure out where the infrastructure is, where the talent is, how to protect that talent, how to grow it, and I suppose when you hear me saying that, it sounds like, oh God, it's futile. It's going to be really, it just sounds really hard to do. But actually what I'm trying to get to is it's about collaborating and actually being much more open about what you're doing, and being promiscuous, if you like getting out there, finding the collaborators, talking to people. I mean, it still amazes me how many people, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this in a minute, Lauren, how the entrepreneurial community that I came from still doesn't live in the universities and just go and see what's going on and say, tell me what you're working on. How can I help you? The walls of the silo are still too armored.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think when I hear you talk about all of that stuff, Phil, there's some really genuine challenges when it comes to scaling deep techs, and those silos are so material, not only from access to capital, access to necessary infrastructure, to talent, to people, to connecting, but innately what it also requires is individuals that operate at a high level of optimism and belief, and are able to suspend the disbelief of taking something or taking on a very big challenge that genuinely is quite scary and may not work, and being able to channel that over many consecutive years. Scaling deep tech and commercialization, or taking something to market, or even thinking about producing milk without cows is kind of crazy. And you have to really believe in the problem that you're solving, the benefits of the impact of it, and have the innate optimism that you're the right person, and that when you don't have the skills or experience for the different stages of the journey, that you're going to be able to find the person who that is able to add to that value and to be able to connect it. And the silos are really the big things that get in the way of that. And so when we look at our university sector here in Australia, and probably the same all over the world, we've got really brilliant people working on some really clever stuff that are probably working on the same problem spaces, and they're not having conversations. Something that I'm quite passionate about and go a little bit too nerdy into it is open innovation systems, and looking at how do we uplift the levels of collaboration between industry, science, research, all of the different activities. And the best case study of a group that does this really well is actually Swarovski, which is the crystals. And they're working on a problem where they wanted to reduce and remove lead from the production of crystals, which is a pretty honourable process, right? Because, they're producing these beautiful things and poisoning all of their staff. That's not cool. It's the 2020s. We need to be able to solve some of these problems. And so they built an open innovation platform and searched the globe for someone that was solving this problem. And they managed to find a group of students halfway across the world looking at reducing the chemical compounds for a completely different use case. A more practical one that you've probably heard of is when NASA runs an Open Innovation Challenge. There was a student that was able to solve some of their solar panel problems that they had, and it's some of these different pieces. How do we do that and translate something that seems so big and audacious in setting up a system that supports you to collaborate across the world, but do it in a space that's innately new and unproven and very high risk? And there's probably only a few people that believe that that could be the thing that takes it on. So you need that high level of optimism. And then we're starting to get a bit more of a feel for some of those real challenges that come with it. Because at the end of the day, it's people that build businesses. And so how can we in deep tech really support the people that are taking on these big challenges and help eliminate some of the information asymmetry that lives around access to all of the different things? Because there's a lot of people wanting to do a lot of good stuff in deep tech, but they're not really all working together.
That's right. And it's like, has anyone ever heard the phrase market annealing? Anyone ever heard this? This is, sometimes you hear a phrase and you go, oh, someone's just given a word to that thing I understand, but I didn't have a word for. So this is what market annealing is for me. So here's what it is. Has anyone heard the phrase product market fit? Right. So product market fit is a problem in deep tech because probably there is no market to fit. Right? If you're creating a rocket company, or if you're creating a quantum, a piece of a quantum computer, that there are no quantum computing companies, let alone a market for quantum computers, or you're trying to, make a new kind of silk with, yeast fermentation instead of with silkworms. Yeah, there's no market for that. You don't know how to sell it. You don't know who wants it. You don't know why they want it. You don't know how the whole thing works. So you have to do annealing. And this is an analogy that the Silicon Valley venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz came up with. So when you join two bits of metal, the way that you do that is you have to sort of change the property of the metal by heating it tremendously and then hammering it until everything starts lining up inside, and then you can start joining the things together. And that analogy is just perfect for me. This is what we all have to do. If we're doing any one of these companies, we have to anneal together. And you can only do that together. There is no single founder deep tech company. And then you've got to be passing things up the chain all the time so that the next layer is kind of ready to take it to the next level. Think about how long solar panels have taken. Like, you could make the solar panels ages ago, but the whole sort of distribution around it and why people want it and moving consumers to change it has taken forever to actually get there. So, and I'll give you a story because we're doing a lot of work on synthetic biology-based companies. We're big believers in this. We think that when nature makes something, nature makes it in a sustainable way. Right, by definition, it makes whatever it's making. When bees make honey, when silkworms make silk, they do it. It's not putting emissions into the atmosphere, right? So we can make all kinds of things that way. So we think it's a great new sort of source of future industries. So we started investing in companies that were making milk without the cows and fat without the animals and plastic without taking it from fossil fuel and things like that. And then we had this terrible realization that there was nowhere to build any of these companies. And then we started saying, where are we going to build these things and who's talking about that? And we started asking people, and everyone was in this discussion loop. Like, everyone was trying to, find some money, and then people say, well, who wants this? And then people would say, well, no one wants it yet because, there are no companies yet doing this. How much does it cost? About $400 million. Right, how are we going to do it? We're sort of stuck in this infinite loop. And then we started looking at all the other companies that were out there in the world that had this problem, and we counted 2,000. So 2,000 venture-funded companies with no way of actually making their products. So we figured, so we thought, what should we do? And we organized what we called a conclave. And so we just brought everyone together in the industry down here to Melbourne. And we just locked ourselves in one of the conference rooms in a hotel, and we said, no one's leaving this room until each of us have said what part we're going to play in bringing this whole thing to life. And it's a really nice moment for me because I'm staying in that hotel while I'm here. And And, I walk past that room every morning at breakfast time, and I remember it's like I can see the ghosts in the room of that meeting and then all the discussions that happened. And now that factory is being built in Queensland. Don't tell Lauren. But it's happening, right? But it took everybody, and we had competitors in the room, right? So this is one question I would sort of give you. If you're building a deep tech company, like, are you being too confidential? Are you being too stealthy? Are you keeping it all to yourself so you're going to fail quietly on your own in a dark room? When you could be bringing people together to actually make this whole thing happen. Because, as I keep saying to our companies, there is no market to compete in yet. You got to work together to make the market. And then one day, sure, go for your life and compete with each other. But we're not ready for that yet.
No, we're not. That's such a nice way to remind me also of the concept of competition, but co-opetition.
Yeah.
And so deep tech absolutely requires that healthy level of sharing and knowledge transfer and skills, but also the shared infrastructure, because whilst there isn't a market here, there's no way of addressing some of these bigger sort of challenges. I mean, I'd like to hear from the audience around some of the things potentially. Oh, yep, straight away, go for it. My friend from WA.
Go on, you go.
No, you go.
It might be a little bit easier for me to answer that one. Anyway, I partially agree with you, by the way, but also I think that one of the great under thought about currencies here is skin in the game, right? So why? Like, why are you doing it, right? And I certainly believe, I don't know if it's shared in the room, that when there's just these sort of passive grant giving programs, no one has skin in the game. Like, a whole bunch of bureaucrats have like ticked some boxes and money goes out and no one really cares what happens until some later date. I would have likened a state-based funding model to be like that, like a founder that has sort of skin in the game. It's like it does mean there are people, for better or for worse, who are driven to have some kind of success around the other side of it, and then it's for the company to kind of sort of figure out whether that success is kind of faked and they shouldn't really do it, or whether it's genuinely a good thing. And I think, remember, there are sources of capital which aren't sort of locked in a state. So for example, I do a lot with these guys because we think the same. And some of our stuff works really well here in Victoria. It just lands just beautifully with the industry here. And so what I'm really looking for is kind of the same thing you're looking for, which is, how do we have a meeting of minds and say, we're doing a lot of work on the dairy industry at the moment, and it begins with what infrastructure's here in Victoria. Look at what's happening with the industry. What's happening with the industry? I thought that was mine for a moment. What's happening in the industry, because it's declining here in Victoria, right? And so these guys are really motivated to fix that problem. I have a whole bunch of companies that can kind of fix that problem. And so it's brilliant. It's actually good for us and our companies that it's in Victoria, because there's skin in the game. But I think there is what I have heard some talk about is of a little bit more national coordination that actually says, okay, well, if we're trying to build a biology-based industrial system here in Australia, here's how we might mobilize Breakthrough Victoria and everything that's happening in Queensland and everything that's happening in South Australia. it's a great provocation. I don't know if you want to build on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic way of addressing it. And so Breakthrough Vic, we often say success for us looks like there being a breakthrough in every single state in Australia. We would love to have more people to play with and to syndicate. It goes back to the point around capabilities. We've got unique capabilities here in the state. We've got a very strong DNA in manufacturing and advanced science and health and life sciences. There's been continued investment in all of these different pieces. We haven't necessarily seen the scale up future emerging industries that we would have liked to, hence why we exist as a specific intervention. Likewise with New South Wales, Queensland, you've all got very different capabilities that make you quite special. There's no reason why we can't all work together to do one part of a really big problem or take on a really big challenge and do that in a way that each state does have skin in the game and that there is an impact for the people that have supported that, so the Victorians get a benefit from it for us, but also the wellbeing and impact of those technologies really take on some of these big problems and solve pieces. I think the National Reconstruction Fund, as big and exciting as it sounds, we're still waiting for lots of detail because they've only just got their first board. A lot of empathy for them. It looks very similar to how Breakthrough was announced, and then they just got a board and everyone was already spending all that money before we got there. We think there's a really big role to coordinate and play there as well. So that fundamentally has a really big opportunity to play that sort of piece and working with different partners, but also with each of the different states is about leveraging what's unique and what our capabilities are to make sure that we're working together and not doing it in a way that, traditionally we've had seeing us compete for things, which has just been very unhelpful for the advancement of industry in the country.
I think we've got, this is a really good time, right? There's funds like Breakthrough Victoria, there's MainSequence, there's more venture capital than ever before. There's the Australian Economic Accelerator, 1.6 billion or whatever it is going into the universities. National Reconstruction Fund, is that 15 billion? Something like that? Yeah. So there's all this money, now what we have to do is make that work, right? We want people to look back in 10 years and go, look at what we did with just $15 billion. Like we need to keep going, like not go, we just wasted $15 billion. What a terrible idea. So a lot of pressure on us all. Any more questions?
That's a good one.
Yep. Brett?
Yeah, Brett from Melt.
Yes.
You mentioned before there, Phil, about smart brains in universities. A lot of the startups that we deal with, startups and scale-ups, building hardware, it's really hard to find a front door to get into a university to get access to those people. And then the people that are in there, it's really hard for them to find a front door to get out because they can't commercialise their ideas.
Yep.
How do you think we could actually leverage all the smarts that are in universities for the founders that have got great hardware ideas that hit a brick wall, need that expertise, but can't get it? How do we actually open that door, do it in an effective way, define what the IP boundaries are, and how that works commercially?
Yeah, I think this is the silos again that we began this conversation with. And was anyone in Lauren's earlier session this morning at 9 o'clock? And I said, well, how do VCs annoy you guys, to the tech transfer people? The top answer was, you keep going directly to all the scientists and you don't talk to us. By the way, I do think people do talk to the tech transfer people, but it's actually I believe. I wish none of those folks are in the room, are they? It would have been good if they are. But if there's the way you break down the silos, you just start working with people, right? And so that's how we roll. Like, we don't do it privately, instead of the tech transfer folks, but we just start working with scientists and actually to get it to a point, where there's a fit, where there's, let's say, investor and researcher fit. You just have to work together because, we all know quite often the work is, the science has been developed in isolation and it doesn't really have an interface with the market yet. Well, you get that over time. The great thing about VCs is they are very promiscuous. They're out in the market all day long speaking to hundreds of people, and they're realizing what is valuable at the moment, and they can infuse that into the team. The work you're doing, Melt, you're seeing people trying to do this same thing all day, every day, out in the market, connected to industry. you should be in their labs and they should be in your facility, right? And it should be fine to do that, because that's how we're going to smash the silos. Let's go all the way to the back.
Thank you. Christina, Director of New South Wales. So we run some research to impact programs with universities, with their researchers. And one of the biggest blocks that appear in the conversations that we have is that we're asking researchers to be researchers, tutors, grant writers, da-da-da-da-da. Is there a chance that some of that money that you mentioned before will go to free the researchers up from constantly chasing grants, constantly having to produce papers, all that kind of thing, so they have the freedom to do what they do best, research, and then match them with industry to build that team around them, a team of entrepreneurs. You know, some researchers are clearly entrepreneurs. Most of them just want to do the research, and they don't have the spokesperson, they don't have the marketer. So how do we build a team around them after we bring them up? There's a lot of questions.
That's
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mm.
And so I'll just use RMIT as an example, but there's 40 other universities. We're a $1.5 billion business, and our revenue generating side is teaching and learning.
Yep.
Research is the loss-making part
Yep.
of our business. So we subsidise research on teaching and learning. And this is to the ladies' commentary at the back. Every time we do research, we're choosing not to do something else with the profit that we make from teaching and learning. And that's one of the challenges that universities have, and it's frequently forgotten in the conversation, because people just assume you've got all this research capability and you can just redeploy it. The majority of our researchers are actually educators as well, and that's where the money comes from.
Totally.
And Australian universities, I mean, international education is the third largest export industry in Australia. So it's a non-trivial revenue generating activity for Australia.
Totally agree.
100%. Yeah, 100% agree. And I think one of the things that just happens a lot is these conversations sometimes crystallize into a kind of, researchers as some kind of homogenous group of people who all think the same way and want to do the same thing. I'm quite often in sort of conversations about, we don't want to commercialize. We don't want to work with industry. We do discovery work, and of course, there's a whole bunch of activity which sort of has to be that, and connected with the teaching and so forth. And then there's some things that just work better if they're being commercialized, because they're properly in industry at scale, and some people like that. And so I think, and investors make this mistake a lot, I will say, because you try and come up with the kind of playbook, right? And this is how we do spin outs, and we expect the researchers to leave the university and carry the flame and be the founder of a company. And we've really quickly learned that some researchers are absolutely best teaching, working with PhD students, working across a whole knowledge space. Just to unlock so many things there. And it becomes, again, like a silo-busting benefit on both sides, because it's connected to everything going on in the university and everything that's happening outside in industry. And I will say that, like, a number of our companies are putting tens of millions of dollars into universities. It's not trivial amounts of money. It's like, equivalent amounts to what, Boeing or Lockheed Martin would put into research organizations. And, maybe it shouldn't be loss-making. Maybe ultimately it's, one of the things I sort of hear a lot is, people say, the dirty little secret is that, things that spin out of universities don't actually give any money to the, doesn't actually make any money. They don't sort of succeed. And I think that's terrible. I think that's a failure on all of us. Like that. I don't understand why universities aren't making truckloads of money from commercialization. And if they're not, we should stop doing it, or we need to do it better. Where should we go? Let's go. Oh, sorry. Go on. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Accord process that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the hot topics to the Accord. So we have a federal government funding model that's not supported.
How are you guys thinking about this Australian Economic Accelerator, and is that good or bad, or does it create opportunity or tension?
It's still early days. In my experience, because I worked with CSIRO for 27
Yeah.
years before I went to RMIT, my experience is that you generate far more revenue and industry engagement through having a background IP in direct contracts with industry than what you do through startup company activity. And my experience with both CSIRO and RMIT is the revenue stream is about 10 times more through having the IP as an attractive for existing industry partner with you.
It's different though today though, because the difference is today, and this is the thing, like it's constantly in flux, right? Yeah. When I was doing Pollenizer, you'd be absolutely right, because I ran Pollenizer for 10 years with $5 million for the whole 10 years. But, today, there are hundreds of millions of dollars flowing in. These companies grow very big, very quickly, have real money to pay, but it's about sort of designing it so that can happen. I don't think we can assume a startup can't pay.
Yeah, I agree with that. We are so out of time, though.
I know.
Enjoy question. I mean,
Go.
with the breaking down the silos of collaboration, what are some of the barriers in terms of sharing the financial rewards or sharing credit and acknowledgements? Aren't there the barriers to more collaboration?
Well, are you saying it doesn't happen? Like people don't share that?
Are they not the barriers? And
The university.
Well, I think that's the skin in the game question, right? If you don't design something so that you can point to you and you, who are all going to be instrumental in this thing going to the next step. If you don't get credibility, if you don't make money, but he does, it's broken. It's going to collapse, like in 2 years, 3, like whenever. Like, so you've got to sort of design for that so that everybody feels like they're getting rewarded in the broadest of sense, right? And this is why the whole, why there's so much tension as well about when you're spinning out companies, about who owns how much should the university get, how much should the venture capitalists get, how much should the researcher get. It matters, because that, whatever you decide on that day is either preventing or causing a key person quitting in 2 years down the road because they're absolutely sick of it. Like they're just, it's just not been designed right. So you've got to design, you've got to imagine it into the future. And I think it's critical. I think it's the most important thing, what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we're at time, aren't we?
We're definitely at time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.